There are rumors of quarterback Shedeur Sanders falling down the draft board prior to the NFL draft this year. Should the Colts take a swing on him at pick 14 if he's there? Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Hicks, your resident film nerd of horseshoehuddle.com, and my partner, Jake Arthur, of course, is our credentialed boots on the ground for the site. Today, we have an action-packed show for you guys. We're going to talk about potential trade-up spots and trade-down spots in next week's NFL draft. We're also going to look at how realistic it is for tight end Tyler Warren to fall to the Colts at 14. We've talked about how he's probably option number one for the Colts in this draft, but is it realistic for him to fall? What pieces need to go in front of the Colts for a player like Warren to get to them? But first, let's talk about the main topic of today's show, and that is quarterback Shedeur Sanders, obviously the son of Deion Sanders, fantastic college quarterback at Colorado. These past two seasons before that, I think it was, Jackson State? I think it was Jackson State that he was there. He was pretty much seen as the consensus QB2 coming into this draft, maybe QB1 even for some people. But it appears as this draft fatigue has set in and the draft process has gone the way that it goes, there is some real talk of him maybe sliding down the board a little bit, maybe into the teens where the Colts will be picking. So with the Colts quarterback room, what it is, where there is a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of question marks, could Sanders be a guy that the Colts consider at 14? Jake, you wrote an article on this for horseshoehuddle.com today, just exploring the idea. So you can open up with your thoughts on this potential dilemma that could come on draft day.
Yeah, so to Zach's credit, this was my idea. And I'm not necessarily advocating for this, but I am advocating for us knowing all the possibilities, because he could be a player on the board at 14 that the Colts have to choose from. So when you look at it, the Colts, you can't say they have their quarterback right now. They're in a quarterback competition, and it's not a competition because these two dudes are just too good to choose from. It's because they have hope in Anthony Richardson, and they want to get him, they want to leave no doubt going into the season that he's their guy if he wins. Otherwise, they like what Daniel Jones has to offer, and they don't have to change the playbook drastically. So it's not like they've got an embarrassment of riches there. So you got to keep those options open all the time until you have a quarterback. For sure, you don't have one, essentially, in the NFL. So you look at Sanders, and you look at what he might offer a team like the Colts, and you look at what they already have. Anthony Richardson, it's such wild peaks and valleys. Really low lows with some incredible highs that you really don't see anywhere else. And with Jones, you just get playable at the best. He can play some good football. He's never going to give you those radical highs that Anthony is. But when you look at Sanders, you see a good solid quarterback who's not going to give you that enormous variance. He's going to raise the floor. And for what Shane Steichen probably wants to do is, to have a quarterback who processes things well, who's accurate, can get rid of the ball, well in the right system, and can move around a little bit. I think he could do quite a bit with Sanders, because he does offer a lot of those things. And I think Sanders is so polarizing, number one, because of his dad, and because he does borderline on arrogance. Let's not skirt around it. That turns a lot of people off. It really does. And if you don't want him just because of that, because you don't like him, I get that. But as a player, he certainly would offer this room something. It does get complicated when you try and figure out the moving parts with that, where the Colts are I think this quarterback really is probably best for us, but what do we do with Jones and Richardson? I think that's where it gets kind of sticky.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously if you do take Sanders in this scenario, you move Richardson right afterwards. Because then there's just no path for Richardson, because you're investing another first round pick in a quarterback. At that point, you're saying the Richardson thing is done. Yeah. But approaching this topic with an open mind, as an analyst, yes, I do think Shedeur Sanders would give the Colts the best chance of winning more games this season. If again, in this scenario. I think he could be the better quarterback between the two, or at least the one that you could have more faith in between the three of these guys that we're talking in this next season, because he's more accurate than both of them, because he's more consistent over the middle of the field, because he can operate an offense better. Where Richardson, again, the highs and lows, along with the injury issues, we can't count on Richardson playing more than 8 games or 9 games this next season. And then Daniel Jones doing whatever Daniel Jones does. Very low lows and not very high highs with Daniel Jones. So, yeah, I think Sanders could be the better guy. But look, the Colts have kind of made their own bed with what's going to happen this next season. They've given the money to Daniel Jones. They invested that top pick in Richardson just a couple years ago, and they have not, as far as we know, they haven't given up on him yet. Like, they are pushing him, obviously, in camp with Jones, but they haven't given up on him yet. So they've made their bed with the quarterback situation. What would be better for this team would be investing in more pieces to help these quarterbacks on whatever it's going to be. So instead of investing in someone like Sanders, who, like, don't get me wrong, he's a good quarterback, but he's probably a high floor, low ceiling type quarterback in the NFL, with maybe the highest potential he could be is like a QB number 8 or 9 or 10 in the NFL. That's not really something the Colts really swing for typically. I mean, if you know the Colts draft history, it's swing for the fences. You're either going to be the number 1 guy in the league or the worst guy in the league. There's no in between with the Colts, hence Anthony Richardson at quarterback. Yeah. So it would be really out of character for them. And Sanders, again, like, yes, he would maybe win you more games this year, but when you already have so much invested in the quarterback position right now with Richardson and with Jones getting the money he's getting them a tight end, getting them a right guard, getting a better defensive player there at 14 probably helps your team a little bit more than throwing another pick at a young quarterback. I totally get the argument, though, that, like, you got to keep just throwing things at that position until you get it right. Because at this point, when it comes to quarterback, like, if you can throw 1,000 darts and one of them hits the bullseye, that works. That's fine, as long as one of them is hitting that bullseye. So I understand it from that perspective, but one, I don't think Sanders is really the guy that you want to take that dart throw with. I just don't think that he's like a potential home run pick. And also, again, they've made their bet at quarterback. So yes, it's intriguing. I've seen some people, because they're just so tired of these two quarterbacks. I mean, Jones, we're tired of without even seeing him throw with the Colts. I understand people being tired of Richardson at this point after 2 years. So there are some people who are advocating for this, but I just think, you got to ride this out one more year. And then if it fails, I mean, you all the guaranteed contracts on the roster are pretty much up. You can get rid of everybody pretty easy. Just give one more shot at this thing with these quarterbacks and then go from there. If Sanders were some generational prospect, maybe you consider it, but he wouldn't be there at 14 if he were a generational quarterback prospect. So, I like Sanders as a prospect. I think he's going to be a fine NFL quarterback, but he's just not the guy who I think changes your franchise just by the second he walks into a room. I think he's going to be a good player, but it's just not really the direction I would go with the Colts, even if he did fall to them at 14.
Yeah, so I think, like you mentioned, you plug him in and he probably gives you the best chance at winning. He has the highest floor. He is the most predictable, which when you're running an offense, I think you really want to know what to expect from a guy week to week. But then when you look, it's next offseason, it's 2026. You look at what you've done. What do you have? Like, was Shedeur good and solid? Like, maybe for whatever the baseline is for Pro Bowl nowadays, was it that? And it's like, you're in the AFC. So it's like, was that enough to really invest in this long term? And for that reason, I do think you have to either completely wipe Anthony Richardson. That question has to be gone after 2025, either positively or negatively, because you can't move on from him and wonder what might have been. Because imagine if he goes somewhere and is really good or stays healthy or what have you. So, like, I see the enticement there. And again, I'm the one that even brought up this idea because it's compelling, because, like, they don't have a quarterback for sure. But I do think you still got to ride it out with Anthony, because if you hit with Anthony, that is the difference maker. That's the one that gets you on these deep playoff runs. Jones probably doesn't do it. And Sanders gives you, like, maybe what CJ Stroud gives the Texans, which is good. But it's like, are you a unicorn and really pushing the envelope towards, like, that absolute elite level?
Yeah, and I want to say, like, me being against the Colts taking Sanders isn't an endorsement of this quarterback battle. Again, Richardson, we don't even know if he can play more than 8, 9, 10 games in the NFL at this point. Jones, you guys know my thoughts on Daniel Jones as an NFL quarterback. I'm not endorsing this battle as being some great thing and saying that Sanders would be a detriment to that, but like, look, the Colts have made their bet at quarterback. Just improve the roster so we're set up for if this thing works or doesn't work after the season. I think adding another quarterback to this just makes it even messier. And it's not even a high upside quarterback in Sanders, who's a good player, but just not a high upside guy. Which, if you look at since Pat Mahomes became a starter in the AFC, it's been him and Joe Burrow, been the only ones who've come out of the AFC. Josh Allen hasn't been able to come out. Lamar Jackson hasn't been able to come out of the AFC. You're not getting out of the AFC with good quarterback. So yeah, I think that's just not the guy that you want to swing at in the AFC. But yeah, I think he's a fine player, and I think he could be better than these two guys next season. But I just don't think it makes sense for the Colts at all.
Yeah, and I do think he could go on somewhere else and be a fine player, but just specifically for the Colts, I don't think it's worth blowing the whole thing up right now. So got to buckle in for one more year, guys. Maybe.
Yeah, at least one more year. But coming up, guys, we are going to dive into the Tyler Warren talk yet again. We haven't talked about him at all this offseason. We're going to talk about Tyler Warren and say, kind of look at like what needs to happen for him to fall to the Colts at pick 14.
Smell that, Zach? It smells like Upwork in here.
What's Upwork?
With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives your business flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. You got to find the right talent. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivered incredible results. It's also fast and easy when it comes to hiring. Just post a job for free. It's simple. And within a day, multiple qualified candidates you can have to choose from. It's also very cost effective. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable top-tier freelancers to scale business efficiently. So visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. All right, Tyler Warren, you heard of him? Top tight end prospect out of the NFL draft this year. So obviously, you can look at a lot of things, and I've seen multiple instances now of like mock draft simulators and all that, and like the most common matches throughout the first round. And Tyler Warren to the Colts is almost always up there. But you look at it, and he's widely considered one of the elite non-quarterbacks in this draft. It's not a super great draft, but when you take away the quarterbacks and like how important that is, there's like 5 or 6 blue chip players on there, and he's widely considered one of them. So if you don't need a quarterback, chances are he's going to be decently high on your board. So we're going to look at this and like how realistic is it that Tyler Warren actually makes it to the Colts at 14? And I mean, moving around, moving up for him, is it worth it? What have you? But Zach, when you look at the path to get, let's say from like 5 or 6 down to 14, how likely do you think it is that Tyler Warren gets there?
There were some highs and lows throughout this draft process where like some days I was like, there's no chance. Other days it's like, well, there might be a pretty good chance of him getting there. I do think more so now as we're a week out, I'm getting more optimistic that he could be there, but there are some legit threats in front of them. And just to speak to the threats, I mean, Jake, you listed 5 teams in here. I think I'm going to list like 2 more teams that you didn't even list on here that could be threats here. But I think we can universally agree that the Jets are probably the biggest fear in that top 10. At number 7, that's been like the other common place that he's been mocked outside of to the Colts at 14. You have their listed tight ends here as Jeremy Ruckert and Zach Kuntz, which Zach Kuntz, the 10.0 RAS.
You love him, yeah.
Yeah, Zach Kuntz out of ODU, I believe is where he's from. But yeah, those are not 2 names that inspire confidence for the Jets. And I firmly believe that Warren could be their fallback option if they can't get an offensive lineman there at 7. So I do think they're going to go like a Membo or a Will Campbell at 7. But if they don't get those guys, say they're both off the board earlier, I do think Warren would kind of be their guy. So that's the biggest threat there. Also, you listed the Bears here as well. Cole Kmet is obviously a big guy under contract for them, but with Ben Johnson coming in, and look, we know Ben Johnson and how those Lions operated. When they were doing like their draft boards, and I know Ben Johnson wasn't doing the drafting, but like he was part of the conversation. They just kind of went out to get talent rather than just going out for like positional value or anything like that. With the Jahmyr Gibbs pick high, with the Sam Laporta pick early in the second round, like they will just take talent. And if they see Tyler Warren is like the best guy on the board there at 10, I could totally see them being a threat there. You have the Dolphins here. I think that makes sense too. Jonnu Smith had a great year last year. So I don't know how pressing that is for them, but I do think the Dolphins could be a threat. Also, I think the Saints could be a threat if they don't go quarterback. If the Saints are looking at this like, hey, Shedeur Sanders might fall to the 20s, we can move back up for the 20s. They're never shy about trading back up out of the second round and giving up future first round picks to come up. So maybe at 9, they're sitting there and like, hey, we can come up and get Sanders. We can come up and get Dart later on. Let's get this stud tight end early on. So there are some threats in the top 10, in the top 12 picks. I do think the Jets are probably the biggest one, though. Like if Warren falls past the Jets and then we don't see a team trade up in within that top 10 for Warren, then I think come draft day, I'm really going to believe that he could be there for 14.
I will say the Jets were the biggest threat for Brock Bowers last year too, until the Raiders happened. So I don't want to give everyone false confidence if he clears the Jets, because again, there are options out there. You even look at the Cowboys, another team in between. They have Jake Ferguson, but they also need more pass catchers with CeeDee Lamb. And sure, he's not a receiver, which they need, but he's a pass catcher. And then with the Dolphins, like they do have Jonnu Smith, but like, can they have literally just one other short target to throw to other than their running backs and Jonnu Smith? Everybody else is a burner. Nick Westbrook, Akina, Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Waddle. So they need another guy that can clean up short as well. So he makes a bit of sense literally from everyone from like the Jaguars on. It's just tough because to have confidence that it's going to happen, you want to see Sanders and Jackson Dart probably drafted in front of the Colts.
Yes.
There's some guys who are like maybes early on who you want to see go, like Jahad Campbell, obviously one of the favorites of the show, but like a Malachi Starks or Michael Williams, guys who you really don't know where they're going to go. Even Shamar Stewart, like
I was going to say, Nick Emenwari would be one to watch.
Yeah, they have such polarizing draft stock that like if those guys start to go ahead of the Colts, that can obviously push Warren down a little bit. The tackles as well, like Josh Simmons going, Kelvin Banks going, like those premier positions, if they start to go off the board, I think it becomes a lot more doable. I'm cautiously optimistic at this point. Right now, I'm leaning a little more towards it being possible, but he just makes a lot of sense for a lot of teams before the Colts.
Yeah, and just to kind of speak to the speculation of this draft, like I've just from talking to some people who are way more connected than I am, I've heard the range of quarterbacks going in the top 10 picks from 1 to 3 to even up to 4. And to some people have been saying, I think 3 is maybe where it ends up being. 2, if an owner doesn't get involved, I think is kind of what we're going to be looking at with quarterbacks up there. So it's not going to be the perfect scenario like last year where all those quarterbacks went in front of the Colts and they were able to get their top defender on the board. I think you're right when you said the offensive line run. I think the offensive line run will be big because you're looking at a lot of teams in front of the Colts. The Cowboys aren't going to go O-line, but they need an offensive lineman for sure. The Dolphins absolutely need an offensive lineman. We'll see what they end up doing there. The 49ers certainly need an offensive lineman. The Bears, I know the Bears built up their O-line, but look, Ben Johnson's offense is built through the trenches. It wouldn't hurt to grab another offensive lineman in there. The Saints just had Ryan Ramczyk retire on them. So, like, there are a lot of places for offensive linemen to go in front of the Colts. And then the more the offensive linemen go, the more likely it is for Tyler Warren to slip down the board to them at 14. So, yeah, I all over the place from people I've talked to. I've heard some people say that I can't see him falling out the top 10. If he even gets to like 9 or 10, the team's going to come up for him. And I've heard other people say, like, who's taking a tight end that's not Brock Bowers in the top. Like Brock Bowers, did he go in the top 10 last year? I think he went just outside the top
He
10
was like
last year.
13 or
Yeah.
something, 13 or 14. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Bowers was 12 or 13 last year, and that was in a much, much better draft last year in terms of top end talent. He still fell outside the top 10, and Bowers is a much better prospect. Like Warren's a good prospect. Like, don't get me wrong, very good prospect, but Bowers, I mean, was a dude who was dominating college football since he was 18, winning multiple awards. I think he's like the only tight end ever to win the Mackey twice. So, like, tight end, who's taking that tight end in the top 10? Like maybe they do. Maybe I could totally see the Jaguars doing something like this because it's just in their DNA to do something like this. But
Yeah.
I could also see this realistic scenario where he falls out. So I think if he falls past the Jets, I'm feeling good. And if he gets past number 10, I'm feeling like he's going to be there at 14. There might be a team that comes flying up to trade up for him. But again, if a team wants to trade up for a tight end, regardless if it's Tyler Warren, who I think is a good prospect, I'd let them. I'd just take Loveland then at 14 and just go on with my day.
Yeah, I will say earlier in the draft process, I was pro going up to get him, but at this point, I think I'm just familiar with so many other guys, and like, you don't need to do that. You don't need to sacrifice a third or fourth round pick or something to get a tight end. Like, I think he'd be super useful for the team and is probably the best player for them, but I don't think I would trade up to do it. So, yeah. Well, we've done it again. We talked about Tyler Warren once more. All right, guys. So coming up next, we're going to talk about what is always a likelihood with the Colts, and that's trading their current first-round pick. What are the potential options trading up, and more likely, where are the trade down destinations? Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn on any TV and turn it into your gaming entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices, no console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you are ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed. As easily as you stream your favorite shows, it's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Fire TV provides endless entertainment with 4K streaming. Watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. My household has had Fire TV access for years now because there's just really no beating those options. Whether it's gaming, TV, movies, whatever you're into, it's a one-stop shop. So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller is required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. All right, Zach. So let's go ahead and discuss the few trade up options out there for the Colts. If not Tyler Warren, someone else like Shedeur Sanders. I'm just kidding.
Oh gosh, if they were trading up for Shedeur Sanders,
right.
Man, yeah. I mean, if they took him at 14, I would talk myself into it probably. Right. But trading up for him, that would be crazy.
I got you there. In the first half.
You did.
So no, what when you look at this thing, what are some destinations that you think the Colts can move up? And to me, it was more about the teams that would want to move back, because I was doing a mock earlier for each team, and I was like, this team needs a lot. They just probably need to move back.
Yeah, I think the teams I'm really looking at would be the Raiders. I think at 6. Yeah. I think they would want to move back because they just need a lot of help. And again, this is not really the most high-end draft where like the difference between 6 and 14 isn't that big. So you could see a team like the Raiders being like, we're fine with moving up. I mean, hence why would the Colts want to move up? But, regardless of that, I think that 6, they want to move back. I think the Saints for sure at number 9 would like to move back, even though they might be missing out on a quarterback at 9. They just need so many pieces and so much help. And then, probably the Bears at 10 as well. I think they feel good about their O-line. They feel good about their quarterback, obviously. They probably want to move back a little bit there. You also listed the 49ers and the Cowboys. I could see them moving back, but I'm not too sure. Like it just wouldn't be much of a trade at that point. So I don't know if either team would really be interested there. So if the Colts wanted to come flying up, and I guess for them to come flying up would have to be some trench player that they have just sky high on their board, or it would have to be a difference maker at the playmaking position. So maybe they have Tyler Warren as like player number 2 in this draft or something, like the highest graded player in the draft. And then I could see them moving up to like 6 or 9 just to secure that player. But outside of that, I'm not sure I see a path for the Colts to move up. It's just not the kind of draft to move. Like, it's not like last year where you have Malik Neighbors that they were desperately trying to get up for in last year's draft. I don't think there's really that guy that they would go up and get in this one. There's not even like an additional pass rusher that I like. I don't think they're going to like Jalen Walker that much or anybody like that. Like if Carter fell, yeah, sure, go up and get him. But Carter's not falling past pick 3 or 4. So yeah, I just don't see the avenue for trading up, even though I do think, Raiders, Saints, Bears will probably be open for business.
That's what I was kind of thinking is who would they even trade up for other than Tyler Warren? Like up to number 6 with the Raiders is probably too high for Warren. And again, it's like, who are you trying to get there? Like Ashton Genty or something. Yeah. But like Will Campbell and Membo are about the only other guys I can maybe think of.
Right. But even with Campbell, like I like Will Campbell a lot and I like Membo a lot too, but they're like outlier players at their position. Like Will Campbell's got like the shortest like wingspan in the history of the NFL for like an offensive tackle. Like Braden Smith is the next closest to him. He has like a 1 inch longer wingspan. And then Membo is awesome. I love Membo, but he might be at guard in the NFL. I just don't see those guys being traded. I did think about that for a second, though, like maybe for like an offensive lineman, but I don't think either of those guys are really worth the capital to move up to like 6 or 9 to get them.
Yeah, that's just a weird year for it. So obviously trading down, much more likely. It opens up a world of possibilities. I would like it almost be hilarious because Tyler Warren could be there at 14 and they still trade down. Like it. Oof. If this makes sense, I would be flabbergasted, but not shocked. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it would just be so on brand.
Yeah. I mean, I could see it in this draft too. Like if you're just sitting there being like, look, we have Warren with the same grade as we have Loveland. We think Loveland could be there at 18 or 20. So let's move back, get some extra picks and take Loveland. And that's better than just getting Warren. Honestly, I wouldn't hate that. But you'd have to be pretty sure that you're going to get Loveland or whoever at that next pick. That would be the only trade-off there. But, there are a couple trade-back options. The thing is, though, in this draft, I don't think you're getting much in a trade-back compared to other drafts because everybody kind of knows the talent difference in this draft. So, in past drafts for, like, say, the Broncos to come up to 14, you might be able to get, like, a 3rd and a 4th, or maybe you can somehow get a 2nd out of them for that trade-up. I think in this one, you maybe get a 3rd from them, maybe 2 4ths or something from them to get up that high. Like, it's really not that much to go back to 20. So you'd have to just be out of options at 14, I think, to move back to there. I think what gets really interesting is when you look at teams like the Bills and the Commanders who are in their Super Bowl window, obviously, because the Bills are always in their Super Bowl window, but the Commanders for sure too. And maybe they want to come flying up for like an edge rusher. They want to get up to 14 and get Ezeraku or Mike Green or whoever there at 14. Do the Colts consider going all the way back to number 27, number 28, 29? But even like, I don't think the haul would be that crazy, but like, I think it would be like, you get like their
better first, be to move back half around.
Well, again, it's this kind of draft though. I don't think teams really view the 14th pick as that much different, but I still think you would get probably their 2nd rounder and an additional 3rd, whether it's this year or next year.
I would do that for sure.
Yeah, so it's an interesting dilemma there because you might miss out on all 3 tight ends at that point. And where do the Colts go if they miss out there? But you get so many more picks in a draft that has a good day too. It could be really interesting. So I think that's the more intriguing trade back. That's the more Chris Ballard trade back too, because we've seen him trade out of the 1st round entirely in the Montez Sweat trade back to get those 2 seconds. One of those seconds turned into Michael Pittman Jr. in the following draft. I think it was Michael Pittman Jr. in the following draft, or maybe it was Ben Banagoo. I hope it was Michael Pittman Jr. for argument's sake there. But yeah, we've seen him trade out of the 1st round entirely even. So I could see them doing a far back trade like that. It's just, I don't know. Warren would have to be off the board and they'd have to feel good about getting like Taylor at the end of the 1st. But I do think that's an interesting thing to look at. Maybe they trade out of the 1st entirely to the Browns who are coming up for a quarterback and get future picks. But again, to kind of argue with myself here, they need to win this year. Like, why does he care about future picks? Like, so there's so much room to maneuver with trading back. But I do think the Colts ultimately stay at 14, but I think trade back's more likely than trade up for sure.
Yeah. So some other destinations I thought of, the Seahawks have, so per tankathon, they kind of compile and put points to each pick. The Seahawks have the 7th most valuable total draft package this year. They're at 18, and they're unpredictable. They're always willing to move around. So are they a team that wants to go up from 18 to 14? Broncos, obviously, the Steelers, if they're convicted about whatever quarterback they really want, they're like, I could definitely see if Jackson Dart is there in the teens, go up and get him. Like we've talked about Shedeur Sanders as well. The Rams could not give a single damn about draft picks. Go up and get your quarterback if that's what you're doing. Like they do not care about draft picks whatsoever.
True.
Which is a shame because they're really good at drafting. Yeah, and then you mentioned, the Browns, the other teams that are at the top of the second round that didn't get their quarterback in the first, Browns, Giants, Raiders, like those teams could be enticed to move up as well. But
yeah, I think
totally getting out of the first round.
Yeah, I do think the Seahawks at 18 are the interesting one to look because I think they have 2 third-round picks. One of them's like near the comp pick range. So I do think like maybe they offer like that second, third-round pick to come up and to secure an offensive line.
Yeah.
Train wreck. Like they need help across that offensive line, and they just gave all that big money to Sam Darnold, who can't play under pressure. So I do think maybe they give up one of those thirds to move up for a Kelvin Banks, to move up for a Simmons, or whoever it's going to be there. I think I could see that one, but ultimately I think the Colts stick and pick at 14, take the best tight end on the board, and then we move on to round 2. But you guys let us know what you think in the comment section below. Would you trade back in this one? Would you trade up and go get Tyler Warren? Do you think Tyler Warren could be there at 14? And of course, would you take Shedeur Sanders at 14 if he's there? Let us know in the comment section below. Thank you guys for making Locked On Colts your first listen today and every day. Now, for your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube where we listen to your podcast. And if you guys want to become a Locked On Colts insider and chat with us directly and get that insider scoop, follow the link in our show notes. And if you don't already, make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2, all on Twitter. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube where we listen to your podcast. We love your guys' ratings, reviews, and we'll catch you guys back here next week for the NFL Draft.